Hello, good evening. Welcome to my home and my channel again. In the past several weeks, I've spoken with several nurses that I know or to whom I am related who have relayed to me that in many cases, those who die of COVID-19 actually die of cardiac arrest. And I find this interesting because this is the latest and the last sign of the times according to the Gospel of Luke. If you look in the Gospel of Luke, he says, in the last days, men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after these things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And if you think about what's happened so far in 2020, the powers of heaven do appear to be shaken, and there are tons of things coming on the earth. It's not just the virus, but it's interesting that the virus is the actual literal manifestation of this very last thing prophesied by Luke, or prophesied in the book of Luke as a sign of the last times. Because we've got tumult, we've got war, we've got famine, financial duress, we have violence, etc., etc. Ironically, no, there doesn't seem to be any war. But, that's just for today, anyway. And so you look at this, and so this constitutes a literal sense of men's hearts failing them. But there is also, in a larger sense, the metaphorical failure of men's hearts. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. The three ways in which men's hearts are figuratively failing them in the last days, given the circumstances around us right now, given the COVID-19 situation. Okay? Number one, the virus has put distance between us. Number two, the virus has put fear into our hearts. And number three, the virus has made men unwilling to help others or accept help from them. So number one, the virus has put distance between us. One of the very first things that governments demanded of the people is that we stay in our houses. They cut us off from work. They cut us off from shopping. They closed restaurants, bars, theaters, cinemas, vacations. They put severe restrictions on travel. In fact, the governor of my state forbade me as a state employee from leaving the state's boundaries. And so it put distance between us. All of a sudden, we were confined to only the people with whom we share a house, which meant I was confined to be alone. This is causing people to be separated from one another, and that's not something for which we're hardwired. I know I'm a introvert or whatever, and I don't really like people, but I depend on other people. I can't make food. The other day I bought a power strip for $5 at Lowe's and thought, gee, there's no way I could make one of these for $5. So hey, what a great deal. But it's put distance between us where we're not allowed to hang out with people that we're not related to. We're not allowed to get into groups of more than 2, 5, 10, 50, depending on where you are in the world. And it's causing people consternation, stress, and depression. Putting distance between people is literally causing people to despair in their hearts. And this distance between us has resulted in increased suicide rates, apoplexy, depression, and just a general sense of being cut off from the world. I mean, we have these formats and we have the meeting platforms, WebEx, Zoom, what have you, where we can be alone together, as it were. But there is something to be said for actually being able to interact with each other. I told my parents at the beginning of the year, this is before COVID-19 broke out, that one of the things that was the most strange for me after my dog died last year is that I would go for a week at a time without any physical contact. And now it can be longer than that for many people, especially if they live alone. And without physical touch, even if it's not, romantic, erotic, there is a sense of despair that sets in for people because of that feeling of being utterly cut off from other people. Number two, the virus has put fear into our hearts. We're afraid of our neighbors. I go jogging down the street one day, and there's this guy with a cane, and he's like social distancing. And I'm like, well, you're the one who should be moving because you're the one walking contrary to traffic and I'm running. So me going out into the street with cars behind me doesn't make any sense. But he wants me to move because he's afraid. And my big point about that story is I clearly don't have COVID-19, severe acute respiratory syndrome, if I'm jogging a 5K, okay? People who have it are probably incapable of running. So why are you afraid of me? And then we put masks on to cover our faces. And I know I asked one of the policemen on campus, I said, how do you feel about that? And he said, I see criminals. So now we literally can't tell who the criminals are because everyone is wearing a mask. It used to be that you knew who the robbers were because they'd walk in and go, "Esto es el robo." But now everyone's wearing a mask, and so now you can't tell anything about anyone. And it's weird because we can't even smile at each other. So there's no smiling, there's no body language. A lot of it is lost because you can't see our faces. All you can see is our eyes. And so our communication is cut down, and so we're afraid of people because we can't see them. We're also afraid that they might get us sick and that they're carrying it. And this isn't necessarily because that was something from us. That's something that's been put into us by the media. And our hearts are no longer hopeful. I know a ton of people started 2020 thinking, this is going to be my year. And then COVID-19, bam! And now they've lost their jobs. They've lost the income they were expecting. Their vacations took a tank. I know some people who paid money down for vacations and can't get it refunded. So they basically just pissed away the money. And this was supposed to be their year. And now people are like, God, I don't know if my job's going to come back. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I've got a brother who doesn't know if he's going to get laid off. I'm getting a pay cut, which is better than, 5% pay cut is better than 100%. But the financial status of almost everyone on the planet has been upset. And some people are in dire straits, and there's a great fear about the future. And of course, this has nothing to do with governments in terms of what they're doing now, because this is a virus, and viruses don't acknowledge international borders. They also don't really acknowledge masks, but that's another topic for another time. Point number 3, the virus has made people unwilling to help other people and to accept help from them. I see people all the time who are waiting outside the grocery store with food, which it's July in Vegas now, and today I think it was 108, but it's supposed to be 110 in 3 days, and then hold that for a week. And these people are outside in the elements, their food is going bad, but I offer them help, and they're like, I don't know you, and they're afraid to go with me in the car. What if he gives me the plague? This is not a plague. Yeah, it's a crappy virus, but it's not the bubonic plague. It's not leprosy. It's certainly not Ebola. And so riding in my car with me for a few miles, I can't help anybody. People don't want you in their houses because they don't know where you've been, and they're, I just don't want to stop and help, or I don't want to be helped. So it's really funny that a couple of days ago, last Thursday morning, I was coming back from jogging, and there was a guy broken down in front of the house next door who actually asked me for help changing a tire. Now, he was a young 18 to 24-year-old tops, and so in relatively good physical condition. So I don't think, having seen me jog up, that there was any fear in his mind. But many people won't accept it, and they go out of their way to stay away from you. You walk up and they put their masks on, like, oh, I can't talk to you, I can't be your friend, I can't go into your house. And it's, and some of the people who are called to go and help people, because you got to call I got a coworker whose AC went out yesterday. And so these service people are going into people's houses, and they're afraid too, and they're getting paid. And that's why we consider them heroes, because everyone is afraid to help anyone else because we might get the plague. And you think back also when this first started, there was that initial hoarding where people would buy stuff that they didn't need, more than they need. How much ham do you need? How many rolls of toilet paper do you really need? And so there was this absolute unwillingness to help anyone, to think about anyone else. And people were just focusing on themselves, this big center of the universe syndrome where everyone pulls into their own house and says, please, God, don't let me die. But they'll let the people next door die or go without toilet paper or what have you. And we're trying now not to go out and interfere with the most vulnerable classes among us, even though some of those people are the ones who need help most of all. There's this nice cell phone app ad thing that I saw for putting people together to help pick up groceries for the elderly and whatnot. But I also know that there was a Vaughn's delivery today, and he put the groceries in the driveway around the corner, put them in the driveway, and then called them and said to come out and get them. It's like, really, dude? Put them on the front porch. It's not like the virus hangs out there like, I got to get the delivery guy. Viruses are not like that. You can't anthropomorphize them. They're not human. And so people are cut off. It's cut off any heartfelt charity that some people might offer, and people who would otherwise maybe help can't. I bought lunch today, and the place I went has stopped accepting cash because they're afraid it's contaminated. They don't want you to put it in their hand. And I noticed that the guy who begs for food outside the Chuck E. Cheese isn't there either. And I don't know if it's just because no one's going to the Chuck E. Cheese, but it's like, is he afraid of getting dirty money? I don't know. It's funny, there's only two things that keep him away. When it rains, on the 14 days a year it rains here, he's not there because he doesn't need money when it's raining. And when there's a viral pandemic, then he doesn't need money. But I know that's not true, but it's just funny he's not there. Those are the three problems, or the three symptoms of this problem. The real problem, the real plague, is one in which we no longer treat one another as brothers. We treat one another as vectors of a viral titer, as if there's something, they're just a contamination. You're a plague, Mr. Anderson, a disease, instead of a person. The real problem is not that there's a virus. We have virus outbreaks all the time. The flu comes every year. I know that's not the flu. It's in the family, and it's SARS, MERS, which is a severe flu, but it's not as bad as the Spanish flu, and it sure is shooting as an Ebola. But the true outbreak is not COVID-19. The true outbreak is fear, a fear that keeps us apart, and especially a fear that has made it impossible for Americans to gather to worship that person, that being that created us equal and endowed us with our inalienable rights. We can't even get together to petition as a unit that God on whom we depend, because our governments have made it illegal to go to church. Or where they let you go to church, they only let you go to church in groups of 50 or for a certain period of time. And it's like, you do realize that faith is a pillar that sustains people in times of trouble. And you basically just told them, you're on your own. Your own testimony must support you. Which is interesting because the leader of my faith said a few months back, and he has since said, it's not because I knew that COVID-19 was coming, that in the latter days we would all need to stand on our own testimony. And here we are, where we're not allowed to meet together and renew that because we're afraid to come together, and we're afraid of the government punishing us if we do. And all this is designed to drive us to a greater dependency on government, which then confines us in our houses and still hasn't been able to come up with anything of real value to stem the tide of viral titer. Because although they may not be responsible for it, there's almost nothing they can do. Masks aren't really going to help. Vaccine is a long way out. And shutting us up just means we stay alive, but it is not the same as living. There's good news, because the next verses in Luke's prophecy are these, and then I'll tell you why this is a good thing. It says, "And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." All of these disasters, calamities, the apocalypse, as it were, is all a precursor to the return of the Savior, or if you're a Jew, to the coming of the Savior in the first place. And then, after all of these things, even after our hearts fail us, then shall the Son of Man come with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, look up, lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. On my mission in Austria, we used to have this saying that the more crap that's being thrown at you, that means you're about to be blessed. And if you've ever played a video game, you know that's how you can tell if you're headed in the right direction. If it's getting harder, you're getting closer to the boss. You're getting closer to the end. If it's getting easier, then you're futzing around in a place where either all the enemies have been cleared out or where you're not going to make any progress except for, just burning time. So as things get worse, they are a precursor that you're getting close to where you need to be. The risk we have now is that we're becoming a world where men no longer have the heart to be men. And that's what it takes. It's not skill, it's not power, it's not money. You gotta have heart. All you really need is heart. And if you haven't seen Damn Yankees, go watch it, because that is a great message in that particular segment of the movie where they sing about how to get hope and heart when you're at the bottom and you think things can't get any worse. But as we lose our heart, we stop being men and we stop being humans. So if you think about the parable of the Good Samaritan, as men lose heart, everyone will walk by the man befallen by robbers. Okay? You think about the three examples. There was the priest who walked by because he was afraid of being declared unclean. And, some people will walk by the person taken because they've run out of hand sanitizer or because they don't have a mask. And then there was the Levite who, it's not allowed to touch this. I got to be pure and blah, blah, blah. And we have people who are afraid to reach out, people who are afraid to go out. And so the Levites, because they're not allowed to take any steps because it's supposed to be, sheltering in place, won't even be on the road to help the person who is taken. And even the Samaritan may not help them because the person who is hurt may be afraid that because the Samaritan is not wearing a mask and hasn't sanitized his car, that his help will actually do more harm than good, to where no one will be helped, even if you want to help them, and we'll all pass by, and the person who is there hurt, bleeding, and robbed will get nothing from us. The evil one wants men to fear one another. The evil one wants us to be shut up, to shut ourselves up, to shut ourselves down, to cut ourselves off. There was a dark age long ago where men lived in fear of one another, and we have that again. And one of the things that happened in the dark ages was the Black Plague. And it was called the Black Plague because it was literally black, but we have a Black Plague, not because it's colored black, but because it is blackening our hearts and turning them away from our fellow men. One of the things that my faith's leadership has impressed on the local congregations, and I only know this because I have family members who are in leadership, because we haven't actually met yet. That will be next Sunday, where they will try and impress that on the members, is that God has given us instruction and provided means to protect and provide for us. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that, you can go out there, all cavalier and that God will protect you. He might. It really sort of depends on who you are, what you're doing, and how important it really is in the grand scheme of things. But he's provided things. He inspired people to create masks, to design, hand sanitizer. He gave us soap a long time ago, and he gave us this brain to think about, what am I doing, and is there a way to do this with the minimum of risk? And that's really the task here, is not can it be done, because it can be done, but how can we do it and still reach out to people who are cut off, who need help, even if all they need is a phone call. There's somebody out there, another advertisement I've seen, a phone call a day. Some people need a phone call. Some people need you to drive by and honk at them or go to their door and talk to them through the screen. I don't know what it is, but God will inspire you. If you're out there asking, why doesn't God do anything? You're the reason. He did do something. He made you aware of it. And if you're willing to be aware and do those things, there's a great opportunity for us to be the Good Samaritan and show that we've got heart, miles and miles and miles of heart. When the odds are saying you'll never win, That's when the grin should start. So when the bases are loaded, the count is 3 and 2. You'll hit a homer, Joe. We can depend on you. You're a hero 'cause you've got heart. And in our day, the heroes are those who have heart. I have a great deal of respect for firemen, policemen, nurses, delivery men, etc., etc., etc. But the real heroes are not those who are out there because it's my job or I'm getting paid, but it's those who do not let their hearts fail them, who continue to trust in God, reach out to his people, and stay faithful to the things that he has asked of us. Because there are really only 2 commandments: to love God and to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. This may be our awakening that will determine who has heart, who's on the Lord's side, who the good Samaritans really are. And it isn't going to be, if this is it, what we thought it was. It's not who has the money and who doesn't, who has the opportunity and who doesn't. It's who is willing to go out on the road and help the people, literally or figuratively. Because our hearts are failing us literally. People are dying of cardiac arrest because they've caught COVID-19. But many more of us are dying of heart failure in a spiritual sense because we're no longer thinking about, relying on, and acting in the service of the Savior. The Lord loves us and watches out for us, but it is usually through another person that he meets our needs. You can be a hero. You just must take heart and not let your heart fail you. As you watch men's hearts fail them, remember there is good news. Then, after that, you shall see the Son coming in a cloud with power and glory. Lift up your heads, for redemption draweth nigh. I do not know when. I am not a prophet. Well, I'm a prophet, but I'm not the prophet, because prophecy is a testimony of Christ. He is coming. This is an opportunity for us to show him that we are really his disciples, because we don't lose heart, because we continue to have a heart and nurture our heart and reach out with our hearts to those of his children who need it the most. You've got to have heart. Don't let your heart fail you. Take heart. Show your heart, and love God with all your heart. If you're out there suffering, my heart bleeds for you. Something I can do, let me know. I am not afraid. I would rather die doing what is right and helping someone else than sitting shut up in this house because the governor has ordered me to do so. Because that certain man who stopped and helped, he was the one that the Savior honored. And he told us that there is no greater sacrifice than to give your life for your brethren. So if I can help you, let me know. You need a phone call, you need a Skype, you need a personal consultation. I'll go live, go Skype, whatever. If I can help you, I want to show you that I have heart. And I want to show him mine. And I wish there was something I could do besides just sit here and make videos. Because that's basically all I do. I'm alone too. But I haven't lost heart. Because he's in mine. Maybe I can bring him into yours. Godspeed. Trust in him. God bless you all. Take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.